Hi, welcome back. In this session, I'm going to talk about communication barriers or problems. There are three big problems when it comes to communication barriers. Firstly, if people know there's a communication problem, but they don't talk to each other to resolve it. Secondly, if they do, they don't listen to each other. Thirdly, if they do listen, they filter information and use it as an ammunition to fight back, not to understand. It'll further deepen the misunderstanding between them, so people stop talking to each other and we're back to square one again. How can we break this vicious cycle? From the viewpoints of problem solving, you have to identify the problem first before you can solve it. Now, how can you solve a problem if you don't even know there exists a problem? By the same token, if the CEO of a company fails to recognize a certain problem within the company and nip it in the bud, that problem would continue to fester until it's too late. Usually the problems start with the communication or the lack of it. In other words, you have to recognize there's a communication barrier first before you can figure out a way to overcome the problem. Chances are, not many people see it that way. There are 5 main categories of communication barriers, and I'll zip through the ones that I've covered before and focus more on the other barriers in the workplace that I've experienced for your reference. First, the attitudinal barrier. I found this barrier quite a bit challenging to overcome. It is like trying to change the person's personality and belief system. Challenging, yes, but not impossible. So, what is the attitudinal barrier? It is the way that people perceive things and act, the perceptions people form based on their belief, moral values, and personality traits. Their perceptions may lead to the false assumption and become a barrier. First, faking, acting, lying, and performing. We've covered this in our previous sessions. Selective or poor listening, filtering. Selective listening means you hear what you want to hear and show no interest to the rest. Filtering could also be a dangerous act if a third-party messenger uses it to serve his own personal agenda. Next, perceived notions. There are a few kinds. First, the perceptual differences. We tend to look at things from our angles, from our perspectives, and insist that only we see the facts and possess the truth. However, our so-called truth may change if we put ourselves in another person's position. We may see things differently. If we're humble enough to do that, we may become more tolerable, more receptive, and less confrontational. Next, perceived power, or its opposite, zero to limited leverage. People with perceived power, real or imagined, can be arrogant and play hardball with his opponents or subordinates. One good example we see in the workplace would be someone who just got promoted to a new managerial position and then suddenly changed the person. He may start treating his colleagues in a condescending way or barking out orders just to show who's the boss. It'll backfire and alienate people. In a buyer's market, corporate buyers will take advantage of his purchasing power to negotiate unfair prices. Vendors with no leverage tend to either accept submissively or refuse to participate in the negotiating communication. Thus, effective communication stumbles. Irrelevance, lack of interest. As we talked about before, irrelevance makes communication hard to sustain. Snap judgment, jumping to conclusions, Here we have two examples to show how vulnerable we humans are. First, we often assume that a trial is not going to be fair when we see a racially biased jury. Second, people tend to jump to the conclusion that he did it when they see a man with incriminating evidence like a murder weapon in hands in the murder scene, even before the trial. In the workplace, people can fall victims to snap judgments by supervisors who prefer rumors from the grapevine to the face-to-face conversation. It's hard to reason with someone who's prone to making a snap judgment. Skepticism, dubious reputation. Communication cannot proceed effectively if we have questions about the other person's reputation or credibility. Credibility and reputation are quite crucial in business circle. In the past, we've terminated business relationship with a few of our customers once we've learned about their immoral business practices. For OEM business, almost all major companies screen and select a limited number of reputable vendors to form a buyer-supplier alliance in order to safeguard their product quality and competitiveness. They're not likely to jump from supplier to supplier simply based on extreme low prices. Buyer skepticism on new players' capability, such as guarantee product volume and quality standards, makes it hard to establish communication channel for business opportunities. Ego. It takes certain communication skill to speak to people in power with a big ego. In the workplace or business, I found that people's ego plays a key role if one wants to negotiate an agreement with the opponents. You need to give credit where it's due or not due. For example, if you come up with an excellent idea that'll solve a stalemate in the negotiation, sometimes you need to tactfully let your opponents feel the idea is his, even though it's 100% yours. Or in business negotiation, there are situations you need to give your opponent some credits so he can show off in front of his boss. Or even work with your opponent to work out a solution to bypass a rigid purchasing protocol. And the examples continue on and on. Next, emotional barrier. Fear, mistrust, and negative emotions. We see this happen quite often to people working in an unhealthy corporate culture. People tend to avoid or clam up towards their colleagues with a dubious reputation for fear of reprisal. For some, they only spout words music to the ears and never to their true hearts. On negative emotions, it's hard to communicate with a person who speaks out of anger or who's emotionally unstable. In a workplace where despair fills the air, people feel resigned to hopelessness. They'd either quit their job to pursue other new opportunity or stay, join a club, and become a deadwood. Extreme obsession and infatuations. Examples like people falling in love and wanting to get married regardless. Or people become addicted to some bad habits and can't get out of it. Kleptomaniac, alcoholics, binge eating, and gambling. It is hard to talk some sense into people like that. It will take time and patience. They need to learn their lessons.